What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. Today we're looking at upside. It's always nice drafting players that outperform their ADP, but let's be honest, slight value here and there is not what brings home a championship. You need upside. Zay Flowers was drafted as a wide receiver 44 last season, finished 32nd in points per game. That's pretty strong value, right? 12 spots ahead of ADP. But it only resulted in a 0.5% increase in your playoff rate. How about James Cook? That was a pretty good pick last season. Drafted as running back 23, finished 19th in points per game, had a good run down the second half of the season. That's better, but he still only increased your playoff rate by about 14%. And the same is true across all positions. You need to outperform your ADP by a lot, and you need to end up as a 1 at your position to really be a league winner, to really increase your odds of making the playoffs or winning a championship. Puka increased your playoff rate by 70% last season. Keenan Allen, drafted 18th, finished 3rd. He increased playoff rates by 59%. CeeDee Lamb, drafted 7th, finished 2nd. He increased playoff rates by 50%. Raheem Mostert, 38th off the board for running back in draft, finishes 3rd. Increased playoff rates by 46%. At quarterback, it even happened at the high end. So it's not even that you need to draft someone super late, right? You need to hit on Raheem Mostert, 38th, who finishes 3rd. Even just hitting at a top 2 at a position will still lead to a greatly increased chance at the playoffs. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen last season finished 1st and 2nd. They increased playoff rates by 43% and 38% respectively, even though they were drafted as a quarterbacks 2 and 3. At tight end, Jake Ferguson was a great pick last season, drafted 24th, finishes 9th in points per game. He did increase your championship odds by 13%. That's really solid. But the true league winner was Sam Laporta, who increased your championship odds by 67%. So again, small wins are great. And if you can add up a lot of small wins, they can really add up, really elevate your team a lot. But that's also difficult to do, is to every single one of your pick be gaining, a couple percent and hitting on all of them. What you want to do to really put yourself in position to win is shoot for upside, because when you hit on those players who single-handedly increase your playoff rate by 60%, it doesn't matter a lot what you did with the rest of your picks, whether they slightly outperformed, slightly underperformed. That doesn't matter that much if you hit on a league winner. So that's what we're doing today. I've picked 2 players at each position that are not being drafted in the first 3 rounds of the draft, because kind of everyone in the first 3 rounds has a path to being a league winner. We're trying to look a little bit later on in drafts right now, but these are players who I believe have league winning upside. So sit back, hit the like button, and let's start things off with quarterback. First name on the list is Anthony Richardson. Richardson is the 6th quarterback off boards. He's going around that round 4-5 turn in 12-team leagues. When I talk about where people are going in this video, it's going to be for 12-team leagues. So it goes around the 4-5 turn. Is Richardson a risky pick? Yes. But I truly do not believe people understand the ceiling here. With Richardson at quarterback last season, no team had a faster situation-neutral pace of play than the Colts, and no team ran no huddle at a higher rate. Now, you would think once they see Richardson go down, they know it's long-term for the rest of the season, they have Minshew at quarterback, you're thinking they're going to slow things down on offense. But they didn't. They finished the season 2nd in pace, 1st in no huddle rate. The Colts are going to be top 3 in pace this season. They're going to be top 3 in plays. And Shane Steichen is a quarterback's dream. He was the offensive coordinator for Justin Herbert when he broke out as a rookie. Then he becomes the offensive coordinator for the Eagles in 2021 and 2022, which just so happened to be when Jalen Hurts was breaking out. before coming, the head coach of the Colts last season, where they made the playoffs and nearly won a playoff game despite their starting quarterback playing effectively 2.5 games and their stud running back missing half the season. If you told me that Anthony Richardson was going to play a fully healthy 17 weeks this season, I would absolutely draft him as a quarterback 1 overall, probably in round 2, maybe the middle of round 2, and I would do that without hesitation. Per 4 full quarters last season, Richardson averaged 29.2 points per game. He crushed the second best quarterback with 0.76 fantasy points per dropback. You add in Jonathan Taylor, who he played like 10 snaps with last season. You add in A.D. Mitchell, who a lot of scouts out there had with a first round grade. They got him in round 2. He's a phenomenal addition to the passing attack. And you get a ceiling where Anthony Richardson could easily be the number 1 quarterback this season. He could put together a season that is the number 1 scoring among quarterbacks of all time. You think Jalen Hurts is a physical freak? Anthony Richardson is 3 inches taller, 22 pounds heavier, and yet is slightly faster than Lamar Jackson. Like, let that sink in for a second. He is the single most athletic quarterback in NFL history. He's playing on a team that's going to play super fast, a head coach that is 2 for 2 in producing breakout quarterbacks, and who just got Gardner Minshew into the playoffs. Like, I think Richardson could break fantasy scoring this season. You can get him as the 5th player on your team. Moving a little bit later in drafts, you miss out on Richardson. I think Jordan Love is an awesome pick this season, has significant upside. He goes at the 6-7 turn, going at 7-0-1 in 12-team leagues as the 10th quarterback off the board in drafts. I have talked a lot about wanting a top 10 quarterback this season. We can push that to 11 if Ayuk does get traded to the Commanders, because then we would really want Jaden Daniels as well. But top 10 or 11, I want a top 10 or 11 quarterback this season. And I think waiting on Love is an awesome strategy if you think you can get him and you miss out on Anthony Richardson. I feel like Stroud got so much hype last season that we sort of just forgot how insane Jordan Love was, but he had 83 career pass attempts heading into last season, yet he threw for 4,159 yards. He scored 36 touchdowns. He was a quarterback 5 overall, 6 in points per game. And when we think about what he did that with, right? Reed, Wicks, Musgrave, Kraft, they were all rookies. He had Dobbs in year 2. Christian Watson was hurt all season. Like, are you kidding me? Like, with that young of a skill position core, he was able to finish 6th in points per game. He scored 36 touchdowns, and you're telling me that you can get him as the 10th quarterback off boards? If that's not enough for you, look at strength of schedule. Guess what team has the most improved strength of schedule for quarterbacks and the easiest overall schedule for the quarterback position in fantasy? The Packers. Love is set up to crush this season and is an absolutely epic pick as the quarterback 10 off boards. Before we move on to wide receiver, I want 10 seconds of your time for me to tell you how to get my rankings for free this season. Go to Underdog.com, sign up for your first account using promo code FFA, deposit at least $10. That's it. Next morning, you're going to get an email with my Underdog and Redraft rankings for free. Okay, at wide receiver, my league winner pick is Calvin Ridley. Last year was Ridley's first full season since 2020, and honestly, he did pretty good. I think a lot of people are kind of a little shaky on the performance. It was very, very up and down, and people are frustrated in fantasy with what he did, but he commanded 136 targets. He caught 76 of them for over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 17 overall, 26 in points per game. So why is he being drafted as wide receiver 33 at the round 6-7 turn? Well, because he signed with the Titans this offseason. People view that as a big negative. But here's the thing. If you look at the contract, they're locked in to Calvin Ridley, right? 4 years, $92 million, $50 million fully guaranteed. So The Titans view him as a wide receiver 1 right now. They've given him the 4th most guaranteed money at signing among all wide receivers. Ridley also, I think, just had a better season than the game logs indicate. He ran all but one route and above average success rate. He was strong, not elite, but strong versus both man and press coverage. The Jaguars honestly just didn't really utilize him properly. He mostly just played like a boundary X wide receiver position. They rarely put him into the slot. They never gave him easy layup routes. Like, it was just all difficult. And that's why you look at the efficiency and it's so bad, because all of his routes are, on the boundary, deep downfield. It's like these are low percentage routes that he's running. So it makes sense that he had low efficiency. This season, the situation is a lot better than it seems on the surface. The Titans are a historically very slow-paced, run-heavy team, but now that they have Brian Callahan as their head coach, he's been the Bengals offense coordinator the last 5 years, they're going to play faster. They're going to throw the ball at a much higher rate. Like, they are moving from Mike Vrabel, who loves to play at a bottom 3 pace, lean on the defense, run the ball, just like a classic style of NFL football, to Callahan, who always plays at a top 3 pace. Like, when you go from bottom 3 to top 3, there's a lot of differences there, right? They're not moving from like 20th to like 13th, right? Where there's really no difference. This is one of the bigger upgrades you can possibly make. They've also talked about how they're going to utilize Calvin Ridley, similarly to how they did with Jamar Chase back in Cincy, giving him much more layup routes, greatly increasing his efficiency, leading to fewer dud games. Because again, that was people's problem with Ridley last season. He had good spikes. He had a lot of really good games when they would hit deep downfield, but it's difficult to be purely a boundary receiver and produce at a high level, especially when, the team was good, but they did struggle a lot at times, and Trevor Lawrence, hasn't been as good as we were hoping he would be. If they had just mixed in more screen passes, mixed in more routes close to the line of scrimmage, just get the ball into Ridley's hand and let him do something after the catch, if they just done that more, the offense would have picked up a little bit more quickly, and then also just move him around the formation. Instead, they're going to do that a lot more. You can't just line them up in the exact same spot every play. Move them around, right? Put them in position to succeed. Good coaches do that. They're going to do that in Tennessee. And so I just think, given all of these positives for him and the fact that he even outproduced this ADP in kind of a bad situation when it ended up being last season, I think he's going to smash his wide receiver 33 ADP. I think he has league winning potential at that ADP. Second wide receiver we'll talk about is Marquise Brown, wide receiver 36 off boards, being drafted in the mid to late 7th round. Hollywood is coming off a rough season. Really no way to sugarcoat that. It was a tough year for him, but that's kind of to be expected when you're mostly catching passes from Dobbs and Clayton Tooney, right? Like, those aren't exactly the best passing quarterbacks. Hollywood's last catch last season came in week 12. Kyler didn't start until week 10, so not exactly a lot of time together there. And I know Brown has, I would say, mostly failed to live up to expectations in his career. But to be fair, his offenses have ranked 29th, 32nd, 9th, 28th, and 24th in pass attempts per game. The one season where they didn't rank as a bottom 8 offense in pass attempts per game, he commanded 146 targets and had 91 receptions. I think the stat that I always go back to with Marquise Brown is uncatchable targets. No wide receiver in the NFL has lost more fantasy points per game due to uncatchable targets over the last 3 seasons than Marquise Brown. He moves to an offense in Kansas City who had the most catchable targets in the NFL last season. Brown is also the only one of their top 3 wide receivers really capable of playing the X, and so he should just be on the field a lot. And that's really all we're asking on Kansas City is, can you be a competent wide receiver that is on the football field? Because if that occurs and you gain any sort of separation, Mahomes is going to get you the ball. Him being the only one that can play X kind of just puts him on the field a lot. When you add in Kelsey's likely reduced snap share, Rashee Rice potentially being suspended this season, the unknowns about Xavier Worthy and his ability to earn targets, or if they have to more scheme him looks in year 1, you get a scary high ceiling for Marquise Brown, especially given a mid-7th round ADP. At running back, my first league winner is Joe Mixon. Right now, he's the 15th running back off boards, being drafted in like the late 4th round. Turns 28 later this month, but he signed a 3-year, $25 million contract, $16 million guaranteed. That is a very large contract for a running back that old, and it basically locks him into that like lead back role this season. Last season, Singletary took over as the starting running back for Houston in week 9. From that point on, he averaged 16.7 carries and 2.3 receptions per game. 19 touches a week is a lot, and that had him as the running back 9 from week 9 on, even scoring only 4 touchdowns and not even being crazy efficient. He averaged 4.28 yards per carry, 6.57 yards per reception. Those are both below average. So he was below average in efficiency, didn't do that amazing in the touchdown department. But when you're getting 18 to 20 touches every game with spikes from there, it's going to give you a very, very strong floor. And if you have any sort of touchdown upside, you're going to be a top 10 running back. Again, Singletary with no touchdown ceiling last season, only the 4 touchdowns, not being super efficient. Just given that volume when he became the starter, running back 9. Mixon at running back 15. I mean, he's done it before, right? That's one thing we look at for running backs is like, it's not all projection based. It's not us being like, oh, maybe he'll be good. He's been the running back 4, 8, and 13 in points per game over the last 3 years. If he gets any sort of touchdown luck this season, he could finish top 5. And that opens up a crazy high ceiling for teams that, either take like 3 wide receivers in a row and then grab him, or maybe you take 2 wide receivers to start in the first 3 rounds and he's your, second running back. If he hits a top 5 ceiling and you can lock in on 2 top 5 running backs, plus you went wide receiver in 2 of the first 3 rounds, that's a really, really nice ceiling. Other league winning running back is Austin Ekeler. And before you click off the video, just hear me out on this one. I've been a little bit too low on Ekeler to kind of like start the offseason. Last few weeks, I've been buying in a lot more. He's been the running back 7, 15, 3, and 1 in points per game heading into last season. And then he had 20 touches, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns in week 1 before suffering the high ankle sprain. As we know, your season is basically over if you suffer a high ankle sprain. Like, you're cooked, your efficiency is going way down. You are not going to recover from that until the following season. I truly do not recall anyone suffering a high ankle sprain and then when they recover from that later in the year being awesome, looking exactly like they did before. But I can think of 1,000 examples of people who looked unbelievably terrible after it happened. But then again, following season, it's not really an issue anymore. This man had 1,558 yards and 20 touchdowns. Then he follows that up with 1,637 yards and 18 touchdowns. Then he goes into week 1 and drops a nuke, right? He has an absolutely amazing game. So he's just going off for a multi-year stretch. And then he gets hurt in an injury that's not long-term, that he's totally fine from now. And everyone thinks he's dust. Like, it's kind of crazy when you put it that way. I mean, it's not like he's free, but he's the 31st running back off boards. He goes at the round 8-9 turn. He goes behind Jalen Warren, Zach Moss, his teammate Brian Robinson, none of whom have ever had a season where they're a top 20 running back. Even last season, playing through the high ankle sprain, he was 23rd in points per game. And so when you kind of look at it like that, yeah, the situation is way worse. I understand that, but that's why he's not going in round 1 anymore. If he was in the same situation, he'd be a top 5 pick. It doesn't explain, the situation change does not explain why you can get him in round 9. Also, the Commanders are going to play super fast this season. They have the worst offensive line in the league and a terrible defense. Does that set up like a lot of Brian Robinson games or a lot of Austin Ekeler games? Ekeler games. They're going to have to catch up because teams are going to put a bunch of points up against them. They can't exactly sit on a lead if they ever get one because their offensive line stinks, so they never really want to run the ball. And they're going to play fast, which again leads more to Austin Ekeler. Like, you're getting a running back that has been a league winner in 2 of the last 3 years and was setting up to be one before being hurt last season in round 9. Doesn't guarantee you're going to win your league if you draft Austin Ekeler, but he puts you in a way better position than other players going in his range. At tight end, first league winner is Dalton Kincaid. He is the tight end 5 off boards going in the early 5th round. Pretty well documented that the Bills have 1 million targets available from last season, 317 available targets. They've only filled that with Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Chase Claypool, and Mac Hollins. So Dalton Kincaid, who is coming off the 4th most receptions ever for a rookie tight end, is in line for a big spike this season. And a big part of that spike is also in the red zone, right? They're missing over 55% of the red zone targets from last season. That's really big for Kincaid because that's what held him back as a rookie. Man, he had 73 receptions, so he was great in that area, but only scored 2 touchdowns. If he can really rack up in the touchdowns, and he can be their most targeted player. I mean, there's a world where Dalton Kincaid has 100 receptions this season. If he's going to add on potentially like 7 to 9 touchdowns on top of that, and you can get him around 5, I mean, that would open up an insane ceiling to your roster. And that's irrespective of exactly how you start off. Whether you want to go hero RB, you want to go with robust RB to start off, you want to do like, wide receiver heavy and then kind of hit running backs in the middle rounds. Doesn't matter. If you draft Kincaid in round 5 and he can hit that sort of ceiling, it basically works with any sort of build that you want. Then finally, tight end that I have been too low on for most of the summer, but have been warming up to recently is George Kittle. Part of this is like the baked in upside of Ayuk leaving, right? If Ayuk leaves, that's obviously a significant benefit to George Kittle. But even if he stays, I'm just a little bit too low on him right now. I mentioned the floor a lot, and it's something a lot of people talk about, just being like, he's got these great spike tweaks, but he hits his floor a lot. That's the tight end position. Every single tight end hits their floor a lot. Majestic over at the 1 week season did a study with tight end scoring in recent years, and he found that Kittle actually has the 2nd highest floor among tight ends, right behind Kelsey. He's scored at least 10 half PPR points in half of his games, 6% higher than Laporta, 10% higher than Mark Andrews for 3rd and 4th. And no player has scored 17 or more at a higher rate than George Kittle. Plus, look at last season. I mean, he set a career high in route participation at 84%. He's been a tight end 4, 2, and 5 over the last 3 years. No signs of slowing down. So if you're going to get him as the tight end 7, I don't know. That's a pretty good discount. It bakes in all potential negative upside and still makes him a good pick. Even if he hits his floor, his floor has been the tight end 5 over the last 2 seasons. Really, really good discount on him. I've been too low. I've moved him up since then. So those are 8 players I think have league winning upside this season. Please leave a like if you made it this far. It really helps me out. And if you want to draft using my rankings, or you want to see all of the draft strategy research I did this offseason that you cannot find anywhere else in the industry, you can see all that on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow with another video, but that, my friends, is the end of this one, and thanks for watching.